6 goals, total domination, and a tactical masterclass from Arne's Liverpool, who surprise everyone each week and get closer and closer towards that title. But how did Liverpool destroy Spurs? And what are the tactical tweaks that Arne Slot made that surprised Ange Postecoglou? In this episode, I'll be deep diving into Salah's new role and how it unlocked Spurs' defence, Liverpool's crossing strategy that has been a theme throughout this whole season, and Arne Slot's change to the pressing structure that, although had some success in this game, still needs refinement as the season goes on. Plus, a bonus quickfire round on some other key players and analysis from the game. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content, and let me know down below in the comments what you spotted in the game against Spurs from either a Liverpool perspective or a Spurs perspective. And if you haven't already, make sure to check out my previous analysis on Slot's Liverpool and how it differs from Klopp's Liverpool. But firstly, let's jump into Salah and how Arne Slot tweaked his role in this game against Spurs. Earlier on in the season, Salah would position himself high and wide, with Trent being the one to tuck in and make vertical runs in behind the defensive line. And the aim of this was to open up that passing option directly to Salah, in which he could then go one-on-one against his fullback. But if you look at Liverpool's structure in the Spurs game, you can see that they have the back four with Robertson and Trent pulling out wide. And then you've got the double pivot of McAllister and Gravenberch just ahead of them. And then you've got these two box number 10s in Diaz and Szoboszlai. And then where would you expect Salah to be? He's usually out wide, but in this case, he's behind Szoboszlai, in between the left centre-back of Gray and left-back of Spence. And there were two reasons why Salah was moved from that wide position to the inside position in and around Spurs' centre-backs. The first being to make direct runs in and around Spurs' inexperienced centre-back pairing. And the second reason was to free up as much space as possible in that inside right channel for Trent to arrive and make those beautiful crosses into the box. And this is early on in the game, and you can see as Gomez receives the ball, Son's tucked in nice and narrow to avoid Liverpool coming through the centre of the pitch. But all that does is free up more space for Trent Alexander-Arnold. And as Gomez receives this ball, you can see that Salah's on Spence's toes, trying to delay his movement out to Trent Alexander-Arnold. And as Gomez passes that ball out wide, Salah makes a beautiful subtle movement away from Spence and goes onto the blind side of Archie Gray's eyesight. And as Trent picks up the ball, Salah makes that lovely little dart in behind Gray, who's inexperienced at this level, and you can see the space in between the Spurs defensive line. It's still begging for someone to make runs in between the centre-backs or in between the right back and the right centre-back. And this is what Liverpool did the whole game. They found out that the best way to hurt Spurs was directly through the middle of the pitch. And 83% of Liverpool's shots came down the middle. It was such a high percentage of their shots. And although they favoured the left-hand side in terms of their build-up, the aim was to get it through to that right-hand side and then make that quick action from Trent into the box. And this movement of Salah into the central areas to allow more space for Trent Alexander-Arnold was the next thing that Liverpool targeted, especially when crossing the ball into the box. Now, Spurs aren't the only one that employ this tactic, but they hold their defensive line on the edge of the box even when they know that a cross is coming in. And Liverpool look to capitalise on this, especially in their first and second goals. And McAllister plays this ball to Gomez, and Son's been dragged far inside to cover the likes of Szoboszlai, Salah, Diaz, just floating around that midfield line. As Trent picks up that ball, you can really see the impact of Salah being inside. He occupies Archie Gray, and then you've got the likes of Szoboszlai and Diaz as the box number 10s, making those runs into the box. And it's really targeted. You know, it's not random runs into the box and then Trent trying to find one of them. They're making runs into focus areas. And in this case, you know, both Szoboszlai and Diaz make the same run. But because Diaz makes it from deep and has that momentum, he's able to beat that offside line that holds on the edge of the box, which I really hate. You know, Trent makes that ball into the box, lovely, lovely ball, and Diaz heads it in. And they did it again for the second goal. The box number 10s have now shifted slightly, with Diaz taking up that sort of left half space role and Szoboszlai in that false 9 role. And as he receives the ball from Gomez, a lovely pass in between the lines, he plays it out wide to Diaz, who then plays it again out wide to Gakpo. And you can see the kind of dilemma this causes and the role of Robertson as the play progresses. Both Diaz and Gakpo being out wide draws Kulusevski and Pedro Porro deep into their own box. And that allows Robertson to arrive late and have a freedom and space to make a cross into the box. You can see the runs already being made in the box. You've got Szoboszlai making a lovely run in between Gray and Spence, which was targeted the whole game. Salah on the back post. Diaz on the near post, and then you got McAllister making a lovely deep run just on the edge of the box. And the most annoying thing here from a Spurs perspective is Bissouma. He checks his shoulder and sees McAllister making that deep run into the box and just doesn't seem to care about tracking it or helping his back line. It's a bit lucky, but Szoboszlai makes the first contact, winning that duel against both Spence and Gray, and McAllister's late run is rewarded, not being picked up by Bissouma, and he heads it quite easily for a goal. And if you look at the crossing locations from both Robertson and Trent, they're in that inside right and inside left position, just in and around the edges of the box. They're waiting for controlled situations to occur where they have a bit more time and space and then play lovely outswinging crosses into the box. And if you look at Trent's performance, especially in the attacking metrics, he had 8 shot creating actions in the game and 4 key passes. They were the most out of any player on the pitch in the game. Now, if you're liking this tactical breakdown so far, make sure to hit that like button and the subscribe button to support the channel. And now we're going to move on to Liverpool's defensive structure and the lovely little tweaks that Slot's making as the season has progressed. Now, in my previous analysis, I explored how Liverpool's press was being exploited a bit too easily, especially if they were going for the title race. They started off with the 4 attackers in a high press and a double pivot in behind them, but that left huge gaps either side of Gravenberch and McAllister. And usually the fullback will push up if that ball is played in behind Salah or the left winger. But in this case, Trent was being pinned by the opposition attacker, and so he couldn't go out and press Aït-Nouri in this situation. But in this game, they set out with a 3-3 structure, and the 3 attackers with the 3 midfielders behind them, but was slightly lopsided, and it worked particularly on goal kicks for Tottenham. Spurs played the ball out to Dragusin, and you can already see in this freeze frame, you have the likes of Diaz and Salah pressing the centre-backs, with Szoboszlai playing slightly withdrawn. He's man-marking and responsible for that deep-lying playmaker, who's Bissouma in this case. And then you got the midfield 3, slightly lopsided to that left side, with Gakpo, who's traditionally a left winger, tucking into sort of a left centre midfield role with the ability to press out wide to the fullback. And the aim of this opposition structure is to allow that easy pass out to the right back and then lock Spurs down that right-hand side. And as the ball is played into Porro, Gakpo initiates the press, and McAllister's in that cover shadow behind him, ready to press Sarr if he receives the ball, and Diaz is covering that pass back to Dragusin as well. Sarr receives the ball, and already you can see Robertson supporting the play, man-marking Kulusevski, and there's little to no out ball for Sarr, and McAllister makes a lovely little block on the pass, and it goes out for a throw-in. But it doesn't always work, and Liverpool are still trying to find that way to prevent that easy out ball against their high press. Straight after the goal was scored, you can see Spurs in their build-up, and Gray plays that ball out to Dragusin, but before that you can see that sort of lopsided 3-3 shape, with Diaz in the middle, Szoboszlai responsible for that deep-lying playmaker, and Salah ready to press the centre-backs if needed. And then you've got the midfield 3 of Gakpo, who's naturally a left winger, but just filling into that left midfield side, and McAllister and Gravenberch in that midfield 3 as well. And as Gray passes that ball to Dragusin, Porro makes a lovely little backwards run away from that space, allowing it to be cleared for Dragusin to carry the ball forward. And this mid-block can still work at this stage, but Gakpo loses Porro in behind him, unable to screen that pass effectively. Robertson's being pinned by Kulusevski, but I think Gakpo thinks someone's behind him that could cover that movement. And Dragusin plays a lovely ball into Porro's feet. Porro makes a lovely turn, and Solanke immediately knows what's happening and makes a run in behind Van Dijk into the right-hand side channel. And you can already see here, if Solanke is able to find that ball across the box, you've got Son arriving in the back post. It's a dangerous situation for Liverpool, and one where they've been played through a bit too easily for Slot's liking. But Gomez is covering really well and makes a last-ditch block on the cross. Now look, Liverpool have one of the best defences in the league. But in the last 5 games, Liverpool have conceded 10 goals, which is far above the average from earlier on in the season. I still think this is an area where Slot's trying to tweak it and find the right structure. I think that front 3, especially if they win the ball in those central areas, is in a great position to counter-attack, which they did numerous times in this game. So the benefits are slightly beating the risks. And onto the bonus quick-fire analysis. And we'll start off with Joe Gomez. In my previous analysis of Liverpool's game against Newcastle, you can see Newcastle tried to attack down that left-hand side against Quansah and Gomez, and it definitely struggled in that game. But in this game, defensively especially, his covering in behind, tracking those runs into the box, on the ball, crisp passing, he didn't really make that many mistakes in the game. Konate will definitely get back into that first 11 when he's fit, but Gomez is deputising well in his absence as he's gaining more match time. On to the next one, and Spurs were definitely targeting Robertson. And I think the hype around him and is he aging and waning in his performance is definitely something that opposition teams are trying to play on from a mental perspective. And he did play okay during this game, but there's still situations where he's being exposed, direct balls over the top, in that 1v1 race in terms of a run track situation with Kulusevski. And, even for the goal that they scored where Ben Johnson beats him in an aerial duel, Ben Johnson's not the best in the air. And Robertson really didn't prepare himself for the jump well enough. So it's something to pay attention to in future games to see if opposition still trying to exploit Andrew Robertson. Szoboszlai is amazing. That's it. That's the analysis. As a number 10, I tweeted it previously, but the level of stamina, athleticism, the technique, the intelligence of movement, you can see he's being used slightly higher up now, so he's being effective in and around the goal a bit more and being more productive in those situations as well. Ange Postecoglou said in his post-match interview, if people can't see it, I'm not going to point out the obvious. Spurs are without their first choice goalkeeper, centre-backs and left-back. But I think what people can't explain when they watch the Spurs side is how open and exposed they are, especially when they're missing such key players. Spurs have scored the most goals of any team this season, but they conceded the 11th most as well. There's situations from that game against Liverpool where they're being exposed time and time again, and it's very naive, pushing both fullbacks on when they have two centre-backs, one who's an 18-year-old centre midfielder and Dragusan who's lacking confidence. Now, Slot had a great squad to work with this season, but let's not downplay these achievements this year. If you remember the noise around Liverpool this summer, it's about how could someone like Slot replace a legend like Jurgen Klopp. But he's done it masterfully, imprinting his tactical system on the team without changing too much, but the in-game tactical tweaks, the man management of the squad, and the overall morale and consistency of performances have been amazing to see. Now, if you want more analysis on Arne Slot's Liverpool, make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this content, and check out the earlier analysis I've done on Slot's Liverpool earlier on in the season. And I'll see you on the next episode of A Game of Two Halves.